Hello, hello, Inman family. So thank you so much for joining us today. We have an amazing session with an amazing co-host, Amy Somerville. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. This is just, always the highlight of the month for me.
Incredible program today, and just an honor to be here with you, Kendall.
Yeah, so we have some fun stuff coming up today, don't we?
We do. Super pumped.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, what are you most looking forward to on the agenda?
Gosh, I think for the most part, coast to coast, agents are dealing with this kind of ridiculously tight inventory. A lot of challenges that come with it. So I'm really looking forward to getting some fresh ideas of how we can help sellers get off the fence, maybe with some cool out of the box, different opportunities. And then, also cool ideas to help buyers. I mean, I think all of us are dealing with setting proper expectations, helping with that buyer burnout or the buyer fatigue, buyers literally looking at everything possible on the marketplace. So, just some really new, fresh concepts and ideas to bring to our buyers and sellers.
I know, I agree with you. I mean, that's one of the things I love about the Inman community and these Connect Now events is all the learning. Like I get so educated in this process and I'm just so grateful to be a part of it, right? I mean, I'm looking forward to hearing from Spencer Raskoff and I'm looking forward to hearing from Clelia and, the market trend session that you're doing with some amazing leaders in the industry. I mean, it's just so much to look forward to throughout the day. And then, of course, obviously the masterminding and other sessions that are happening this afternoon. It's just good stuff,
And it's the best of the best coming together to share, just these awesome ideas. I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm really pumped to hear the Brad Spencer interview. Brad never is afraid to ask the tough questions. So I'm really looking forward to hearing how things go today.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have all these amazing people from all over the country and all over the world. I mean, from Canada to California. I saw you guys in the chat, and then of course I'm representing part of the East Coast here in Florida. So, and I know you're in Colorado. So I love that we can get together and get going. But, I know we have some sponsors that we have to thank before we get this party started. So why don't you go ahead and thank our sponsors?
Absolutely, right? Huge thank you to our sponsors, Boomtown, Bird Eye, Corcoran, Curbio, Homes for Heroes, and Ogvo. They are the folks that make this event possible. So thank you so, so much, sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, we have, for those of you watching right now, you can stay right here in this session right here for the next couple of hours with us as Amy and I walk you through each of the sessions here today, this morning. And then also, make sure you, interact with us in the chat. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're thinking and we want to be a part of that conversation with you. And then, of course, there's a collaborative workbook for you to use. They're going to drop that in the chat. So make sure that you interact with that and share your notes and ideas, your top takeaways. That's such a fabulous tool for each of us to use to learn and grow from. And, we'll also be throwing some other things in the chat for you as well today. So make sure to be prepared to click through and enjoy our time together.
I, for one, love that collaborative workbook. I think that I had never participated in a Zoom event that offered that kind of tool, and now I can't imagine not having it in every Zoom session, every Inman Connect Nows. These are the tools that are like go-tos for me. So I agree with you. That collaborative workbook is awesome. All right. Well, are you ready to get things kicked off, Kendall?
Let's do it.
All right, let's get this party started. Again, so excited for this first session with Brad Inman and Spencer Raskoff together again, and it is going to be fire. So where is the opportunity for you in Spaxx, iBuying, and more? We are about to find out. Brad Inman sits down with former co-founder and CEO of Zillow to discuss what you need to know about the latest dealings in real estate. Enjoy.
Welcome everybody to Connect Now. I'm so happy to be with you today. We have a very, very good program. Starting off with my first guest, Spencer Raskoff, a favorite of the Inman community. We know him from his many, many years building Zillow, and now we know he's wearing a lot of hats. And we're going to sort out all those hats that Spencer wears today, along with getting his perspective on the housing market, the supply squeeze, iBuying, Picasso, what the heck's Picasso? And all these other things that Spencer's working on. Spaxx, remember that? Well, anyway, they're still around, and Spencer's involved with those as well. Welcome, Spencer.
Hey, Brad, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You got a lot of books there. Looks like some you wrote.
That's true. That's true.
Where are you at these days, LA?
I'm in Los Angeles. Yeah. My
great.
home office in LA, and excited to talk about lots of different projects that I have going on.
Fantastic. So full disclosure, I invested in one of Spencer's companies, but it's a media company. He asked me to invest in the real estate stuff, and I can't do that because I got to stay independent. But I love what he's doing in the media world. So we'll maybe even touch on that. Spencer, we got to dive right into some of these tough issues. And I want to focus on something that Inman's been obsessed about reporting on lately. And that's a problem faced by the entire industry, no matter what part of the puzzle you come from. And that is the supply squeeze and the lack of inventory. And I wrote an essay last week. If you indulge me for a second, I'm just going to read that. And then we should also just, in this, I think it'll come out the various hats you're wearing that you can talk about. But here's what I wrote. Think of the housing market like a pizza party. 20 people are invited, but you only have one small 12-inch pizza. What do? Well, you cook more pizzas, alas, build more housing. But what about the uninvited guests? What are they doing here? And why are they sometimes getting first dibs on this tiny little 12-inch pie? Right now, the housing market has a slew of uninvited guests and one of the worst housing shortages in the history of the country. One reason is because traditional home buyers, in some cases, being pushed aside as a slew of new types of corporate buyers are entering the market. Everyone wants a slice of the U.S. housing market. Zillow offers, OfferPad, Open Door, other iBuyers, new business models like Picasso are buying houses on behalf of vacation home buyers. All these companies have billions to invest. And then I go on to say, for these entities, houses are an asset class, not homes. Yikes. This is like calling apple pie an asset class. So anyway, that's what I lay out to stir it up. And I know you and I on stage have always had so many great discussions. So lay into me. Tell me why Brad Inman is foolhardy and wrong.
You're not entirely right. Let's say you're not. So we have to separate things a little bit. Okay. So first of all, yes, huge inventory shortage, huge problem. Obviously, difficult for home buyers, difficult for real estate agents, et cetera. No doubt about it. What's causing it is, of course, lack of supply and lots of demand. Economics 101. But iBuyers are not buying homes, are not the culprit here, because when iBuyers like OfferPad or Zillow or Open Door, when they buy a home, that home gets renovated and then relisted within 6 weeks or so. So that home quickly comes back on the market, refurbished. Think of that like a certified pre-owned car. They take a used car, they refurbish it, and they relist it. So iBuyers actually are contributing new inventory because they take a used home off the market, they renovate it quickly, and they resell it. So they're not at all part of the inventory problem.
Doesn't that increase the price of the house? I mean,
no, because they're offering fair value for the home and then charging a service fee, typically 5 to 10% to the seller for the speed and convenience of buying the home, quickly. And then they're putting 15,000 of renovations into the home and relisting it. So it's
not to go down a rat hole here, but yeah. But you're entering, kind of disrupting the normal market flow. I mean, 6 weeks right now is a long time. And why do we really need an iBuyer in the middle of this, kind of perfectly efficient market? And maybe it's not
because it's not efficient. What happens is a homeowner would spend $15,000 to renovate their own home to ready it for sale, and then they would list it. And instead, the institutional buyer is buying the home at this service fee. They're putting in the $15,000, and OfferPad does it in 14 days. I mean, try doing a $15,000 renovation on your home in 14 days. You can't do it. So these institutional buyers are much more efficient and effective at refurbishing these homes for resale than individuals are. You know, their cost of paint is 1/4 of what you would pay for paint, just as a little example. So, so basically, instead of a homeowner refurbishing their home for sale on their own and putting up that capital and then listing it, they're selling the home at a fee and being charged a fee by the iBuyer. Then the iBuyer is putting in the $15,000 to renovate it and relisting. And the new buyer is buying a home that's been refurbished professionally rather than refurbished by an individual owner. So it doesn't change the supply demand dynamic. It just improves the housing stock and improves speed and certainty for the seller and for the buyer. If there
let me ask you one before you move on.
Yeah, sure.
But aren't we adding another middle person here? And it's always been the bane of the real estate market. There's all, mortgage lenders, realtors, and brokers, and title companies, and now we got iBuyers in the middle, and now we got institutional buyers in the middle, and I mean, all this, someone pays for that, and it's a consumer, I think. And when does this all lead to something that's efficient, cost-effective, not onerous? It just seems like adding more middle people is contributing to a problem that we've all said, oh gosh, there's a lot of people grabbing at this small little pizza.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think of them as scaled renovation companies. So if there's 6 million homes that sell every year, and the average American is spending $15,000 to fix all the where the dog scratched at the front door, and the real estate agent says you really need to repaint that front door before we list your home. Like, all that work is being done by 6 million individuals, really inefficiently. And these are institutional renovation companies, really, is what they are, and they're just doing it at huge scale. And so they're improving the housing stock. They are charging a fee. You're right, Brad. I mean, the it's not commission, but the service fee that they're charging to the homeowner, to the seller, is basically two things. One, to provide speed and certainty on the transaction, but also to shoulder the risk and the burden and the project management of the renovation so that the seller doesn't have to do it. So it's not, I don't know, I think they're lightening the burden of a homeowner by reducing the stress of their own renovation as they ready their home for sale, and they're getting paid for that through this service fee. But they're not changing the housing stock or the supply demand dynamic. The folks who are the people that are buying homes and turning them into single family rentals. This is like an Invitation Homes or Starwood, Waypoint, Colony, American Homes, all of which are now part of Invitation, but they're tiny, tiny, tiny. I think, I didn't have time to check before this call, but I think they have something like, 80,000, maybe 100,000 total rental homes.
I think it's 200,000.
Okay.
But that's 200,000 more than we need right now when there's such a shortage. I mean, it's 1 out of 10 according to one survey. So anyway, I don't want to stick there. I think you really addressed it well. Those institutional investors also, as they diversify, for them it is an asset class, it's not a home. They are going to probably acquire more here, but I don't know, maybe it's not meaningful. Let's move on to Spaxx Picasso. Boy, did you poke the bear. You bought OfferPad. You're now competing with your former employer. How's that going? And tell us about OfferPad and why OfferPad.
Sure. So I don't exactly see it that way. No surprise. But firstly, look, I'm Zillow fan for life. So I'm still a shareholder. I will always be a Zillow shareholder. I still own a lot of Zillow, and I'm still rooting for the company, and I have lots of friends there. And I think the team there is doing a phenomenal job continuing to execute on the strategy that my team laid out. And so, there is no animus between me and Zillow. When you take a SPAC public, you take a shell company public, and then you go out and look for private companies to merge with. In the case of Supernova One, my SPAC, we looked at hundreds and hundreds of companies and got close on dozens of deals. And we ended up selecting OfferPad. I certainly did not expect when I took a SPAC public that I would end up doing a prop tech deal, and I certainly didn't expect that it would be an iBuyer. But that's what happened. This ended up being the best deal that we ended up finding during that cohort of looking through hundreds of deals. What I like about OfferPad is the same thing I like about Zillow, frankly, which is it is so early in this migration from selling your home the old way to selling your home the new way. all of these iBuyers, Zillow, Opendoor, OfferPad, Redfin now, they have 0.5% market share right now. So 99.5% of the time that someone sells their home, they're selling it the old way, where a real estate agent walks around the house and says, you need to fix this, fix that, and then I'll list your home. And I just think in this digital world where people are buying health insurance on their phone, they're buying grocery delivery and food delivery, and they're buying cars on their phone. Everything is becoming vertically integrated and much more easy through mobile. I think that you're going to see many, many more homes be sold and bought through that. So
Spencer, you said 0.5%. One of Brad Inman's unbelievably accurate predictions was that we would have what did I say? 50% iBuyers this coming year. But realistically, yeah, that was off, wasn't it? I make some wild ones just to stir it up. But 0.5%. What realistically? Let's just go out to 22. What market share do you suspect iBuyers to have?
22 is still going to be, I don't know, 0.6 of one, still around the same. But if you look out 5, 10, years, I think a lot of homes are going to get sold. This way. I don't know what a lot looks like. Maybe it's 5 or 10% nationwide, but in certain types of homes, it could be 20 or 30% of homes.
So if we used transportation like Uber changed how we did transportation. It may not be here that iBuying is the entire market, but it changed how we order cabs, and it changed how clean cabs were, and it changed how cab drivers treated us, and it changed how whether or not they could talk on their phone. Do you suspect that the effect of iBuying will just help revolutionize the whole housing market and make it more efficient?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, and
that was a softball, Spencer.
Yeah, well, let me. So I'll try to give an interesting answer to a softball question, right? Which is, OfferPad, as an example, has 2 products. They have an iBuyer product called Express, where they'll buy your home at a and charge you a fee for it. And they have a listing product called Flex, where they'll say, look, I think your house is worth $200,000, and we're going to charge you a 10% fee. So 200,000 minus 10% fee, you'll net 180. And the seller might say, the homeowner might say, well, I think I can maybe get 220 for it or 230 for it. And so OfferPad through their Flex product will say, great, let's list it. We will list it for you at 230. And and we'll do the renovation. We will spend the $15,000. We will manage it for you, and we will actually do the work for you. And we'll list the home. And if we get 230 for it, then you'll pay us a listing agent fee, and you'll pay us back the $15,000 renovation cost. And if we don't get the 230 for it, then you can always take our $200,000 offer in those 60 days.
Gotcha. Now, are you a broker with your own agents like Redfin and Zillow in this case, or are you partnering with local realtors?
In that case, OfferPad is its own broker. If a buyer comes with a buyer's agent, they of course pay a buyer's agent commission. So
do you want to become? You built a consumer brand so successfully. I mean, my God, Zillow's like the dream branding formula for everybody. Do you see OfferPad like a consumer knows Century 21 or any? Are they going to know OfferPad? Is that your strategy, or is it a partnership strategy?
Both. The OfferPad brand will never be as big as the Zillow brand, and it doesn't need to be successful. OfferPad needs to be a well-known brand among sellers that think of it as another way to sell their home. So a seller might say, oh, I can list my home with this Keller Williams agent. I can list my home with this Century 21 agent, or I can talk to OfferPad about options to sell my home, whether it be sell it to OfferPad, list it through OfferPad, or some other product that OfferPad creates. So OfferPad absolutely needs bigger brand awareness in the seller community, and that's coming. That's one of the things that the Spaxx merger will allow it to do. This is a company that's only raised $200 million in venture capital, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. And yet they've still done $7 billion of total transactions, 30,000 total home renovations and sales. And with this transaction, with the Supernova deal, they'll end up having $600 million of cash on the balance sheet, which is going to allow them to do more branding and grow faster.
When will that go public, Spencer? When will we see the?
It's up to the regulatory gods right now. My guess would be the deal will close in a couple months, probably 1 or 2 months from now. We'll see.
And is it going to be called?
It'll be called OfferPad. So yeah. So what happens with these SPACs is right now SPNV, which is the ticker for Supernova 1, trades on the New York Stock Exchange. When the deal closes, SPNV will become OPAD, OfferPad. Supernova 1 will cease to exist, and it will become OfferPad, and Supernova will just fade away.
Gotcha.
So that'll close in a couple months, and at that point, OfferPad will be public.
Now, take a minute to explain Picasso. That's another venture. Oh, by the way, before we leave that, Spaxx. Are Spaxx here to stay, or is this a temporary bubble, weird thing that we should not be doing?
It's a good question, Brad. So I have two other SPACs, Supernova 2 and 3, that are publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange that are looking for great private companies to merge into. PropTech actually has had more SPACs than I think almost any other industry, right? We've had Porch, Open Door, OfferPad, Latch, I know at least 2 or 3 other PropTech companies. Other than the space industry, I think PropTech has been, one of the most affected by SPACs. SPACs are here to stay. I believe that they are an important way for some companies to go public. There are now 3 good ways to go public: going public the traditional IPO way, going public through a direct listing like Roblox did or yesterday Coinbase did, and going public through a SPAC merger like OfferPad is doing. And there are pros and cons to each of them, and we could talk for a half hour about the different pros and cons if you want. I'm happy to give the 2-minute version, but they are here to stay. What is happening though in the SPAC market is that there were far too many SPACs that got filed and went public. There aren't too many good SPACs. And what makes a good SPAC? A good SPAC is one with credible, high quality sponsors, so the people behind it, in my case, me and my team, that can build connectivity with the founder community, can convince a private company like OfferPad, hey, you should go public by merging with us. Here's why, here's how we can help, and have great connectivity to Wall Street, can convince public market investors that they should invest in Supernova and OfferPad. So there are a lot of SPACs with with kind of a tech person, and there are a lot of SPACs with a Wall Street person, but there are very few with both. And my SPAC has in the entire.
Well, you bring. I just
with
did a profile of Bill Foley. I call him the most successful person in real estate that nobody knows, and
yes.
His success is important. Is in a very big part of it his personality, not his personality, but his cred on Wall Street. And I assume in your case, your cred with Wall Street's amazing. Let's move on to Picasso. Yes. I've been calling it Picasso. It's not Picasso, it's Picasso, just like the famous artist. So what's this piece of artwork you're doing with Picasso?
So this piece of artwork, much like Pablo Picasso, that took different forms of art and merged them together to create something beautiful. Picasso is creating a canvas of co-ownership where multiple families can buy homes together. Now, they don't have to know each other. So the insight that Austin Allison, the founder of .loop and my former Zillow colleague, and I had when we started Picasso is that many, many people aspire to second home ownership. If you have a second home, like I know you do and I do, it's life-changing. It really is. It allows you to be when I'm at my second home, I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better friend, because I'm out of my element and I'm enjoying life in a way that you have a hard time doing in your primary home. But second home ownership is typically only accessible to a very small portion of Americans. And the reason for that is utilization, because owning a second home is expensive because it sits empty most of the year. So what Picasso allows you to do is it allows you to buy a portion of a second home, maybe an eighth or a quarter or a half, and we pair you with other co-owners. Picasso does the property management, and you use the Picasso app to schedule visits to your home. It's growing like a weed. We have over 75 people. I think we'll have 150 people by the end of the year. We just raised another huge round with the fastest company ever to become a unicorn, $1 billion valuation. And we should get you one, Brad. Tell me Aspen, Napa Valley, Park City, Santa Barbara. You tell me, where do you want to own an eighth of a house, and Picasso can make it happen.
And real quickly, realtors, is there a role for them in this?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the way we get most of our homes is from on-market inventory. So an active listing, let's say a home is for sale for $3 million, and we approach the listing agent and we end up buying the home for $3 million. We fractionalize it or turn it into eighths and we resell it. And so the listing agent benefits, and we're using buyer's agents. One of the other big use cases for real estate agents is they have off-market inventory. Basically, if you're a real estate agent in Napa Valley, you know all the homes that you've sold over the last 10 years, and you know all those homes that sit vacant. And a common use case is what we call the sell down use case, where that agent calls the owner and says, hey, I know you only use your home 6 weeks a year. Maybe you should sell, a quarter of it off. take some money off the
So
table.
I can, as an owner, I can sell. I'm up in Sonoma in the woods. I'm not fancy pantsy Napa. I'm funky dunky Russian River. But here, I could sell off a fraction of this to some stranger.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
And I wouldn't have to hang out with them. They would come when I'm not here.
Exactly. You would
so I
never
could
know.
stick them here in the rainy season.
Yes, well, and it's way better. It's way better than Airbnb-ing your house, right? So where transient visitors come through and treat it like a party house, it's very different than a co-owner, somebody that actually owns a quarter of that home and
Gotcha.
feels a connection to the property and a connection to the community.
Well, this is a party house, so it fit perfectly. If they wanted to.
I walk right into that.
Not today, though. Let's go. And by the way, congrats on that, and congrats on all your success. And one of the great things about Inman is we've been able to profile people. I love success, and you have such a track record and have done it ethically. But
because of the extraordinary people around me, on every one of these ventures, to be sure. But thank you.
Yeah, let's look kind of overall, like the stock market, the housing market, Bitcoin, crypto. It feels to me, having gone through multiple recessions and collapses and seeing white collar shenanigans lead up to something, this feels a little swarmy to me. My gut, says this doesn't seem quite, imbalances in the market, divides economically, just all kinds of stuff. Am I being ridiculously paranoid? Or
so here's what's happening in my view. No, you're not being ridiculously paranoid, and I've written blog posts about this, like especially during the depths of COVID. I was if the world is in the toilet, like why is the stock market at record highs? Like something doesn't feel right about this. What's happening? And what's happening is we're now approaching our 13th year of free money. Coming out of the 2008 global financial crisis, global central banks, the US and everywhere around the world, cut interest rates to nothing, basically. They gave away free money. And so all of these consumers and companies for the last 12 years have been able to borrow for free from central banks. And that has allowed them to do two things. Number one, it's allowed them to invest in all sorts of stuff that they might not otherwise have invested in. But number two, and that creates an asset bubble in those different things, whether it's real estate or the stock market or Bitcoin or whatever. And the second thing it does is it forces people to move out on the risk curve, right? If I'm going to earn 0% having my money at the bank instead of 3, 4, 5% when interest rates were higher, well then, heck, I might as well, like I need to chase yield. So what do? I turn around and I start angel investing in early stage startups, and that creates a situation where a 6-month-old company is worth $1 billion. Like, well, why? Well, because venture capitalists and other investors have rushed in to do early stage tech investing or, crypto or whatever. So it's created a global asset bubble. Bubble's maybe the wrong word. A global asset inflation because of a long period of low interest.
But it's what you're saying. It's also created companies and jobs and opportunities. So that's my only worry about what you said, Spencer, is whenever the government and Wall Street get together, like here they have, right? One, providing free money, two, providing low interest rates. Wall Street takes advantage. During the pandemic, I read the 4 best books about white collar crime, starting with, back in the 80s with leveraged buyouts, and then the long-term capital management, and, which was a whole, not a criminal enterprise in that case, but a whole explosion. And then also without regulation, but also marrying those two. My worry here is we got the same sort of shenanigans potentially happening that has unintended consequences we may not even know about today. I mean, we're in the middle of the subprime crisis. Everyone can say that they, called it out, but very few people did. But, it was a problem waiting to really explode into a crisis. Is there any danger here with, this partnership between the government and Wall Street?
Well, so, the central bank policies worked in one sense, which is it did lift the world out of the GFC, and unemployment is at record lows in most countries around the world because of this. So it basically worked. Now, it might also create huge inflation, which we haven't seen yet, and perhaps it's definitely creating asset inflation, maybe asset bubbles across different asset classes. Is it, what are the shenanigans that are lurking below the surface? I guess if that's the question. Boy, it was so obvious in 2007, wasn't it, that there were mortgage shenanigans going on.
Yep.
You know, I don't know, Brad.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. My trees here are 700 years old and very tall, and I get up there in the clouds sometime when I look at them. So I don't want to put you on the spot.
There are probably shenanigans happening in private company projections, estimates, yeah, they're not shenanigans because I don't think there's illegal activity, but there's unbridled optimism, let's say, which is probably gonna prove to be have been overly optimistic.
Well, and I don't know, make it dark. There's a lot of good things going on, and we're coming out of a really bad period. And it seems like a lot of people are working really hard to repair the country and the world. So that's a good sign. And we're focused, it seems like, on the right stuff. Hey, Spencer, we've run out of time. I could go on and on. Promise me you'll come back. We're going to hopefully be live hopefully we are going to be live in Las Vegas in October. Would love to get you down there, get you on stage. Good luck with the SPAC. Good luck with OfferPad and Picasso and everything else you're doing. And you're really a star, and the Inman community I know loves you. And some don't like Zillow, but they like you. So anyway, thank you again. And Inman listeners, tune into the rest of the day, and we got a lineup of a ton of really great speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad, for a very stimulating conversation. Like I said earlier when we first started, Amy, I love the stuff that I learn, right, by attending these events. And I'm going to tell you, I had to go Google SPAC.
I
wonder if anyone else did.
There's a lot to learn in that going public kind of venue, and that just offering another opportunity to go public. Very interesting, super fascinating. I don't know. I thought that was so good to watch two brilliant entrepreneurs have what seemed like a pretty casual conversation. Although, Brad poked the bear there a couple times, which was good and super entertaining, but also gave us some really interesting information and insight, I thought.
Yeah, I know. When I think about, the first part of their topic, right, which was like iBuying and the effect of iBuyers on our industry, I know that's not new anymore for us, but I know it's still relatively new for consumers, and which is why, the market share there is what it is, right? But I'm curious, to the audience, where do you see iBuying going? Like, do you see it increasing in our market, guys? Do you see, what are you seeing with the impact on inventory? Like, do you agree with Brad or do you agree with Spencer? Like, is iBuying going to affect our inventory, and how is that going to affect market share in the future? I mean, what do you guys think? So let us know in the chat what you think about iBuying and its effect on our industry and on our community. And then, honestly, the most interesting topic to me in that was Picasso. Like, Amy,
I know.
you and we're going to buy a house together.
What I thought was I've heard about Picasso for quite some time now, but one of the most interesting perspectives I thought was the comparison to the Airbnb or the VRBO. Because, I think like most people, our family just got back from a ski vacation, and you have the same conversation after every vacation, which is, we should buy a house here. This is what we should do. But then you have this dilemma of, if we buy a house here, do we feel like we always have to come to the same spot? We can't vacation anywhere else because we've invested here, and it's vacant for so much of the rest of the year. But then you don't want to Airbnb or VRBO because there's no vested interest, and people don't treat your house the way that you would hope that they would. I thought that was that's a brilliant concept. I think we should buy a house together.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. I mean, thinking about the benefit to people looking to build, what I call generational wealth, because we all know real estate is the path to generational wealth, right? And, investing not just in your homestead, but in, second homes, investment properties, things like that. And, I think Spencer was correct that this is Picasso and Airbnb are great opportunities for that. And, in talking to other other people and talking about the timeshare concept. It's just been, as we evolve and we have more options and opportunities, it's really just opened land ownership and real estate ownership it's way open now, right? I mean, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that whole idea that, how many people sit around and think about second home ownership, but it's just not even a possibility on your own. The idea of coming together with, 8 other parties and everybody, has the vested interest and everybody cares about the property. And then again, then you don't feel bad going vacationing any other, place in the country because you have spent enough time there in investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, honestly, this all leads me to get really excited for the next session. And because I think it's along the same lines and connected to, I'll say unique opportunities, right? I mean, I think that's part of the next segment.
It is. This is going to be super exciting. Claylia will introduce us to 3 major categories of financing that are kind of making waves in the industry today. And Kendall, you are facilitating that session. So I am jazzed up for that. But first, it is Back to Basics Month here at Inman, and we have asked members of the Inman community to share their best business tips with you. So here's Laura Fangman.
Laura Fangman here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We are getting back to basics, and here's a tip for you. Focus on your sphere of influence. They already know you. They already know you're fantastic. I know some of you have come to real estate after other sales careers, and the idea of reaching out to your sphere of influence seems impossible. Here's why it's really important. Over the course of your career, your sphere of influence is going to be the greatest source of income for your business. It's not all about just those people. You're relying on their spheres of influence as well. It's a ripple effect. Grandma's not going to sell the family farm just because you got your real estate license. However, next Wednesday at bingo, when the lady 2 chairs down mentions that her nephew's a dentist and he's moving back to town to start a practice and needs a place to live, guess who Grandma's going to recommend as the best realtor ever? And that only happens when you're top of mind. One of the best things you can do for your business is to stay connected to your sphere.
This is Boomtown, the only real estate solution that generates, qualifies, and manages leads that convert to closings. For you, that means we handle the promotion, the expert digital marketing, the lead generation, and capture for you. When all of this is handled for you, you get your time back, you get your life back, you get your control of your growth and business back. No more going it alone, no more overwhelm, no opportunity escapes. Boomtown, real estate success the easy way.
Hi guys, I'm so excited to be here with you today to talk about disruption in the resi financing space. This is something I've been thinking a lot about, and I think it has a big impact on some aspects of buying and selling real estate. So I actually made some slides for us to talk through the key trends that I'm seeing in this disruptions. We're going to talk through them today, and then we're going to, over the course of the next couple months, introduce you to a number of the companies leading these different aspects of disruption to really help you have a better sense of how these tools can help you facilitate both buying and selling homes, and to just give you a better sense of one of the key trends that's happening in the disruption space. So to begin, I'll outline the 3 major areas of disruption that I see. The first is transaction facilitation. These are financing tools that are going to help reduce historical points of friction in the transaction. Generally, they help buyers buy as if they're cash buyers, even if they're using a mortgage, or they help sellers buy before they sell their old home. These are intended to be short-term vehicles, and they serve either buyers or sellers. The next category is what I like to think of as mortgage alternatives. These are alternatives or, importantly, supplements to mortgage financing, and they're usually equity-based. They're intended to be mid to long term, and they specifically target buyers. The third category is home equity access. These are alternatives to a home equity loan, and they generally buy out a portion of the home's equity. And I want to take a moment to explain this, because this is a new concept that's happening as a part of these trends. Historically, financing for buying a home or for home equity access came via loans, which basically, they were a form of debt capital lent against the asset. But many of these new companies, facilitated by technology, are now actually fractionalizing. So like breaking the home into pieces and offering to buy a chunk of the home. They do that for a fee, but then you don't pay any interest. And the home equity provider then basically participates in the upside of the home with you. So those home equity access tools specifically target owners, and all of these are kind of contrasted against traditional mortgage and home equity lines of credit. So asset-backed debt financing. Let's move on and we'll look in more detail at all three of these key trends. So the first is transaction facilitation. I describe these as novel forms of short-term capital because these are not replacing any other form of capital that existed in the market already. This is actually an entirely new idea that's being brought about by venture capital investment in this space. These come in a couple different flavors. So the first distinction to recognize is that sometimes this is a standalone service and sometimes it's part of a platform. Example of a platform would be Orchard, Fly Homes, or even HomeLight, which offer these types of services as a part of an overall service that they provide generally to buyers, sometimes to sellers who want to become buyers. There's also Homeward, Knock, and Ribbon, who offer these as standalone financial products, disconnected from any attempt to facilitate the transaction in another way. So there's usually two models here. The first is that they turn a buyer into a cash buyer. The second is that they turn a seller into a buyer. In both cases, they earn their money through spreads and fees. So when I talk about spreads, that's the value of the home when they buy it versus the value that they sell it for. And then fees, that's the cost of engaging this service. In most cases, these providers have limited exposure to the actual home that they're buying. So they don't have any secondary tool like creating a real estate fund that they need to use. They just access the debt capital markets themselves and then provide that capital to home buyers or home sellers in this new way. And important for us is that they both advertise directly to consumers, and particularly Homeward, Knock, Ribbon, and HomeLight, very interested in partnering with agents. So you should think about this as the tool that you can leverage if you're either working with a buyer who you think it would be more competitive if they appeared as a cash buyer, or with a seller who'd like to buy before they sell their old home. Next category is mortgage alternatives. These are new models to supplement or replace a mortgage. They leverage the home's underlying value. Unison is sort of the OG in this space. It's been around for a while. It's pioneered creating this sort of home equity-based lending model. The models are somewhat more variable here, but as I said, the key trends include equity-based financing, and then another important thing here is rent-to-own models. So Divvy Homes is a rapidly growing rent-to-own model. They will basically buy a home on behalf of a potential owner and then rent it to that owner, and they pay rent plus a supplementary fee that allows them to basically earn into the equity of the home over time until they get to a point where they could receive a conventional home equity line or mortgage. These models earn money through fees, but significantly, they also intend to earn money over time through the securitization of these assets and their upside. So it's a fancy way of saying that they're basically building real estate funds at the same time that they're building consumer-facing capital businesses. All of these companies basically intend to have a fund that they could then either securitize and offer to other people or continue to raise debt capital into. That's basically like a single family rental fund that they own or own in partnership with someone else. So these are complex businesses. These guys also generally reach consumers directly and via agents. So this is another page that you should really think of as potential partners if you're working with someone who'd like to, maybe reduce the size of their mortgage, or who you think would be open to this type of model. It is interesting to remember that in most other areas of our lives, for instance, companies at this point almost always receive both debt and equity financing. So these entrepreneurs are betting that over time, we'll take those same innovations and apply them to the largest asset that we hold privately, which is our homes. Final category is home equity access. Similar thinking to some of these mortgage alternatives, but really focused on owners who want to tap into the value of their homes, but they don't want to take out a HELOC or pay interest rates. So these platforms allow owners to unlock the value of their home equity by selling a portion, sometimes all, of their home while remaining in residence in the home. So these basically allow the capital providers to participate in the upside of the home over time. They earn money through fees, and as with some of the mortgage alternative players, they're building up these real estate portfolios. So they're also basically real estate managers at the same time that they're running tech companies. These companies tend to have a direct-to-consumer focus and are less focused on selling via agents, but they are an interesting group of companies to know about and understand when you're working with, in particular, sellers or people who are thinking about potentially building up a portfolio of homes, or maybe using an existing home to buy a second home. This just gives an alternative to borrowing money to people who want to leverage their existing home equity in a way that will creatively provide them financing. So over the course of the next couple of months, we're going to go deeper into this. We're going to have a bit more of a detailed conversation today, but send us your questions. Let us know in the chat what you think about this. And I'm looking forward to engaging with all of you to have a discussion about the way that financing is evolving in our space.
Wow, Clelia, that is a lot. Thank you so much for taking some time to break that down for us. And, I think for some people, there's some new exposure there, right? To some new options and opportunities for consumers and agents alike, right?
Yeah, well, Kendall, in my life, I am so lucky that I get to move kind of between being an advisor to my father with our family's real estate brokerage and investing in what I see as kind of like the future of the residential real estate transaction. And I'm always thinking, what is it that people who are working in brokerage today need to understand about what's coming next? And I think this is an important trend that people really need to understand. I think we're going to see a lot of disruption in the way things are financed. And so that's why we felt like we wanted to bring these options to the admin audience and to spend the next couple of months highlighting them.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, so let's break down each section while we have, a few minutes here today. And, the first one, transaction facilitation. So, for me, I am a bit familiar with these types of programs through a program that I have leveraged called Zavvy in my office, right? Bringing in, iBuyer options, as well as, I call it like bridge solutions, which is what you identify as a transaction facilitation. But like, could you take a moment to just kind of educate the audience with an example of like how a bridge solution or transaction facilitation type of platform might work to help, an agent assist a buyer/seller in accomplishing their goals, right? Like, can you break that down a little bit with an example?
And let me begin just by acknowledging that even though these platforms are becoming more widespread in the United States, they're still, they're not available in every geography. So the first thing is that if you're watching this, if you're interested, you should go to these websites. You should check out whether these companies are available where you are. Ultimately, I'm confident they will be, but for today, there are places where they are, there are places where they're not. And, I think the way to think about it as an agent is that you probably want to familiarize yourself with these platforms today. And then when you end up in a situation, where, you're in a hot market, like the one we're in today, where you think there's going to be a multiple offer situation, you're working with a buyer and you want to set them up to appear as if they're a cash buyer, you can leverage one of these solutions in the market. And that can be, we all know that can provide like a meaningful competitive differentiation. And then I think conversely, if you are talking to someone where, you're an agent who works on both sides of the transaction, these tools are also really important to know about because it allows you to approach someone who's a seller. Maybe you're even including this in your pitch deck or materials when you're going to sellers, and you can basically say to them, I want to get your sales listing, but I'm also going to be able to start working with you as a buyer today because I have these financing tools that I can help you basically become a buyer even before we've sold your home. And so it really, I think in particular, these transaction facilitation tools, or they are bridge solutions, I like your language too, are really powerful tools to have in your tool belt as an agent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think about it, like you said, when you have, I think it just could really help open up inventory. And the reason is because, like we just were discussing, there's a lot of sellers out there that in this particular market are really afraid to put their home on the market because it's going to be gone in 2.2 seconds and they are afraid to be homeless, right? So, I think that's such a great tool, like you said, in the tool belt for real estate professionals today to have something like that they can leverage to get more sellers off the fence, right?
I think that it also, it is potentially something that helps you win listings, right? To be able to go in and reassure your seller this way. And these tools aren't widespread enough. I can pretty much guarantee that if you're someone who starts to use this as part of your pitch, most of your competitors aren't going to be using it as well.
Absolutely. I think it's definitely a conversation starter and a marketing point of interest to get sellers to pick up the phone and reach out to agents and say, hey, what's that solution? Just like the iBuyers are doing, right, with their marketing and saying, hey, these are the problems we solve. I think that this type of partnership with these companies can do the same. So let's talk about mortgage alternatives, right? So mortgage alternatives, obviously, rent to own is not new, right? I mean, there's just not that many companies, I guess, doing it. And I guess it's becoming more common. How do you see that impacting inventory and agents and their ability to help buyers buy right now? Like, what do you see is going to be the compact result of that?
Yeah, so I would say both with rent to own and with these home equity based mortgage alternatives, they can be a powerful tool to help buyers who might not otherwise feel like they're well positioned for a mortgage. Though it's also notable that currently a lot of the home equity companies are really working with people who have like strong credit scores, and it's almost like an additional option as opposed to an alternative option. But to go back to rent to own, I think there's two interesting things that are going on in the broader world that I think make this a little different from rent to own as it might have existed in the past. The first is that technology is enabling this stuff to happen kind of at scale and with more predictability and visibility. So what I mean by that is like, we can use data to better predict the value of homes. We can use data to like better manage these relationships, and tech platforms can better manage these relationships, make this service easier to deliver. So I think there's the option for it to, or opportunity for it to scale more than it has in the past. The other underlying trend that is a part of both mortgage alternative and home equity access is that we're seeing more and more interest in single family rental asset exposure on the part of institutional investors. And some of the people watching are going to know this because they're actually competing against those investors in the market right now. Like, those investors are going into the market and buying up portfolios of homes, but they're also looking for other ways to build home portfolios. And these tech companies that allow them to basically be exposed to a slice of the equity are really interesting to them. So there's way more capital available for these kind of mortgage alternatives than there ever has been in the past. And I think that combination of tech making it easier to deliver, more predictable, and the capital that wants the exposure is going to push these alternatives more and more into the mainstream over the course of the next few years.
So when you say that, do you see that impacting like the homestead market or the secondary market primarily? Like, where do you see consumers taking advantage of an opportunity like this?
Yeah, I think it could just as much be a first home as a second home. Really, it's just a way, like, if you're someone who wants to reduce your debt exposure and your monthly interest payments, this is an interesting way to do that, right? I think the question for us that we don't know at scale kind of societally is, you talked before when you were talking to Amy, Kendall, about how home ownership has historically been one of the greatest wealth building opportunities in the US and globally. And this does maybe start to eat into that over time, right? So there could be trade-offs, but the short-term reality is that for many people, this is a good alternative to taking on a larger mortgage or more debt.
Yeah, like Spencer said earlier today with Brad, in his interview with Brad, Picasso, right? To me, Picasso kind of fits in this category, or this section of mortgage alternatives as well, right?
Being driven by the same trends of tech allowing fractionalization of properties more easily than it ever has in the past, and an enormous institutional interest in exposure to SFR properties. Like, Picasso is just, a second home focused riff on this same song.
Yeah. Well, and it also makes me, think about, how our agents going to get involved with these concepts in order to help educate the customer and the consumer. Because to me, I think that's going to be the greatest barrier for these programs, right? Is because consumers just, it's a little like on the outskirts. Like, I think the word you used when we talked before was like, it's on the fringes. It's very different, right?
Yeah. And I think, the biggest question that I see around these is not if, but when. I'm pretty confident that these tools are going to move more and more into the mainstream, but how long it takes for that to happen, I'm a little bit less sure. So, are we going to see widespread consumer adoption of this like in the next couple of years? I'm really not sure. But like 5, 7, 10 years from now, do I think that these tools are going to be a lot more widespread in the market, and maybe even a decade from now approaching normal as people think about financing? My gut tells me yes.
Yeah, I think 5 to 10 years from now, you're absolutely right. Our industry is going to look completely different than it does today. So I'm glad we're recording all these things so we can look back. Remember.
Me or brownie points a decade from now, Kendall.
And then real quick, last but not least, the last home equity access, for owners, right? Tell us, like, I recognize that they're going direct to consumers to do this. How do you think this is going to impact real estate agents, if at all? Do you think this is going to impact, inventory, pricing of homes, our ability to do our jobs?
I don't think so, though. I guess there is a scenario where the partial owners are, the one upside that could exist for real estate agents is that in some of these companies do have models where they push the owners towards some sort of liquidity event, or they need to refinance. So that basically means like they either need to sell their home or they need to find a way to like cash the equity owner out. And for some people, that will motivate them to sell and look for an alternative. I'd like to believe that the kind of upsides of this could actually be net benefits for the real estate community. This would make it easier, for instance, to like take money out of your home and renovate without carrying an additional interest rate, to, take money out of your home and improve other aspects of your life, or to take money out of your home and invest in real estate in other places. So hopefully it creates more flexibility for people. Again, I think the skeptic's question mark here is, does this erode people's ability to create value with their homes over time in this way that, that's been such an important mechanism for people? And I guess the response to that would be that maybe the risks of that are offset by the benefits of having less debt exposure. So I think we'll have to see how it's going to play out in the market. But my instinct is that for our Inman community of, broker owners and agents, this is probably a net benefit.
Awesome. And hopefully I hope that consumers, as they take advantage of these additional opportunities, use them to reinvest back into their lives, like you said, and not use it to just transpose, debt, right? I think I told you before, I was a bankruptcy lawyer before I became a realtor, and I'm hoping that we've learned a lot of lessons from the crash, that we so many of us experienced, and so I hope these new alternatives help foster an investment in greater wealth and opportunity than what I've seen people do in the past with it, right?
I mean, my guess is that like for some people it does, and for some people it doesn't, right?
Absolutely. Well, with that, thank you so much, Clelia. There's so much more I know to unpack with what you shared with us today. And I'm so excited that Inman's committed to, continuing this conversation over the next few Connect Nows so that we can, continue to educate ourselves and be prepared as consumers get more educated about these opportunities, and we can speak to them as their advisor and counselor in real estate from an educated perspective. So thank you so much for doing all that hard work and understanding, breaking it down, and sharing with all of us your thoughts. So thank you so much, Clelia.
Kendall, it is my pleasure. And I would just say, to your point, we are going to have leading CEOs in all of these categories on stage with us over the course of the next couple months. So everybody keep your questions coming. We're going to have editorial coverage of this as well. And we want to help educate you. Let us know what you want to know more about in this category. And Kendall, it's so great to talk to you as always.
Same. I can't wait to see you in October and give you a hug. All right, and then we're going to keep this party going. Next up, we have Amy Somerville talking to Ann, Terrence, and Tommy about market trends in 2021.
Welcome,
Hello.
panelists. How are you all?
Doing
Good.
great.
We're warmed up and ready to roll.
Warmed up and ready to go. Okay, so super pumped up about this session. We've got a lot to talk about and in a short period of time, so we're just going to jump in. Anne, let's start with you. You happen to be in a marketplace that is exploding with headquarter companies. What have you been seeing and experiencing in your market that is maybe a surprise to you in 2021 coming off of the market of 2020?
So we, last month we had 0.3 months of inventory in Pierce County, which is where we operate. So we're about an hour south of Seattle. So we have continued to see the exodus out of Seattle for first-time home buyers mostly. I did a panel recently with some luxury brokers, and they were saying, look, stories of people leaving downtown are a little bit overblown. Tommy probably can speak to that. There's that whole conversation going on. So it's not like everybody's leaving Seattle. I don't want to perpetuate that, but anybody who's trying to buy a home for the first time is definitely coming down here. Our median sales price is $470,000 in Pierce County, and that's giving them the opportunity to own something, but that's then putting a tremendous amount of pressure on our local renters, would-be home buyers. So we're definitely seeing a lot of pressure in our market right now.
Understand. Tommy, you don't know anything about that, do you, though?
No, nothing. A little bit. I mean, it's interesting. So here in Chicago, it's like a tale of two cities, right? The detached single family home market, just like Anne, is on fire. There's 1.5 months of supply here in Chicago because everyone wants that detached single family home. They want the yard. They want more interior space. And then overall, the condo market, overall in the city, it's a 4-month supply, right? Which is still pretty good. Now, the tale of two cities is this, right? Chicago, the great city of Chicago, is made up of 77 neighborhoods. So the macro conditions are made up of micro markets. And the downtown, when a lot of people think of Chicago, they think of the world-class dining, shopping, nightlife, the Magnificent Mile, that area, the near north, which is highly dense and full of high rises. We have 12 months of supply there, right? So while Anne has like 1 hour of supply, we have a year's worth of high-rise condos because there's more people that are looking to sell and leave and move up in more space than there are coming in right now, right? And part of that had to do with the conditions that the pandemic brought to the city, right? Restaurants were closing down, retail, right, wasn't as open, accessibility, and a lot of these high-rise, especially these luxury buildings, the amenities that they have, like the pools, the gyms, the sun decks, a lot of those were closed off access from a safety standpoint. So a lot of people decided to trade up and look for larger spaces.
That makes a lot of sense. And Terrence, you're in a marketplace where you're watching a lot of people head out to get some acreage, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people migrating, obviously, to the south and obviously to Texas. Tesla's coming here, and we're also getting a lot of big corporations. I'm in College Station, so if you Austin in San Antonio, which is southwest, and then you go forward in Dallas, and in Houston, the southeast. If you draw a triangle on the Texas map, I'm right in the center of all that growth. But for us, yeah, I mean, people are looking for ranches. It's hard to find land right now, especially ranch properties that have an improvement on it, and mainly because the dense areas that we have, where you have a lot of new homes, more production type neighborhoods, those are the people who, instead of trading up to another home, they're trying to find land. And so that's starting to be a lot of turnover with our market.
Interesting. So how are you, everybody's talking about the tight inventory market. I think that is pretty consistent, unless you're talking about the high-rise market that Tommy was mentioning in Chicago. How are you educating sellers about their options and opportunities in this market?
Go for it, Ann.
Well, I mean, we're finding, we were discussing earlier, since all of us have been practitioners for a while, that we are seeing some people who are leaving the area, because if they're staying in our community, like here in Tacoma, we have, I think, 47 miles of coastline. We're pretty landlocked. So if you want to stay in your neighborhood, I mean, the trade is just not very realistic. People are not finding that it's, they're not secure enough. They don't want to sell the house they have and not know where they're moving. So that's proving to be a really big challenge. Last year, we saw a lot of people staying in place and saying they were just going to add the hot tub, the deck, the covered patio, all those things. That's sort of come to a halt as prices have skyrocketed this year. And so we're just watching them leave. I'm going to be sending Terrence lots of referrals, I think, because they are moving out of our metro area and they're moving to other states because they can sell at a premium here right now and go buy elsewhere. So we're needing to make those connections. We're needing to help them with the referrals and just be there, because the timing, there's a lot of life changes that are being sorted out, and they got to work that out on their own time. So rather than feeling like, oh my God, this is the moment and the market's going to fall out in September and the interest rates are going to go up. I mean, I think people are pondering really huge life changes. And so we just need to come alongside them and give them options. The only thing that I will say is that I feel like it changes every month, you know, that the dynamics are shifting. And so we're really trying to provide current inventory, not just to our brokers so they can educate their clients, but to the public, because it's very easy to get caught up in sort of the media swirl on what's happening. And, you know, we don't have as many neighborhoods as Tommy does in Chicago, but you've really got to drill down to your area and your property type and figure out what's happening in that little micro market.
That's super, super true. And I love the idea of the figuring out where your migration is going from. If it's going from Seattle, going to Texas and making those referrals and making those connections with agents and partners across the country so that you can serve the customer the best possible way. But so Terrence, like, how are you supporting buyers? How are you setting expectations of what they might find? They sell in Pacific Northwest and they come to you. How do you level set with them of what's going on with inventory as a buyer?
No, that's a great question, Amy. I think the biggest thing is, and I've told my, you know, as I was a broker owner for 10 years and have transitioned from that space, the one thing I always train my agents on is listings or leverage, right? And listing agents now, the people who have always focused on listings first, you know, you may get 10 offers, but you know you're going to get a deal done, right? Now, those other 9 offers, somebody's going to lose, but as the listing agent, you're going to win. And so having that inventory and having those relationships is very key. And then also, we talked about this a second ago, like when you go to a seller and say, hey, if I sell my house, I'm fearful I won't find anything. Well, if you're a listing agent, you have pipeline of potential listings that you can put them in front of. And that's another value proposition for you as a double whammy when you're going to people and trying to go over your unique selling proposition.
Absolutely. What do you think about that, Tommy?
I agree. I mean, I think the key word that, you know, everyone should highlight and what Terrence said is expectations, right? It's setting that proper expectation, because a lot of buyers, you know, they want to come in with this mindset that they're going to get the win, but they're taking a lot of L's before they get to that one property, right? So it's just setting that expectation so that buyer fatigue doesn't kick in, or when it does, that they know, right, this is part of the course. It's not just them or the terrible market for them. It's just really competitive.
One of the things that we're trying to do is more agent focused, where it's like, let's talk about exactly what's happening. I mean, we maintained our weekly meetings throughout the pandemic. And I think it's really important, because you've got to come back in and check in and say, you know what, I actually broke through last week. It's important to share the victories, where it's like, keep going. I mean, the fatigue is very real for the buyers and for their agents. So how do you keep people encouraged? How do you share some success stories? You know, being willing. I would also say picking up the phone. This is not an innovative marketing panel. This is like old school real estate's getting it done, which is calling the listing broker on that pending sale. What were the terms on that pending sale? How much can you give me? Because I'm going to write an offer on the house down the street, and we're watching prices leap by $50,000, you know, $100,000 in waves. So the sale that closed behind you 30 days ago is almost irrelevant. You're really having to lean on those pending sales. So I think some of those things are not so much about what the buyer's doing, but really an opportunity for the agent to do some legwork and get some info.
Let's talk about something that is kind of top of mind for all of us in a tight inventory market. And Anne, I know something that is obviously near and dear to your heart is this kind of tight market pushing people to walk the line of legality and compliance. And what are you doing or encouraging your agents to do to educate and protect buyers and the trend of, contingency waivers, pocket listings, unconscious bias, all of the things that kind of come along with this sort of pressure?
I think we have to recognize that it's immense, and that our job is to protect our clients on both sides, and to settle them down and help them make good long-term decisions, because you want to be their preferred broker 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so we can't make decisions just for this moment. The pressure is so great, and people are feeling so panicky, that we're seeing some pretty desperate moves. And I think that's a conversation we're having here internally, which is like, how are we still upholding the pillars of our practice? How are we making sure that we're providing an equitable process? And whether that's sticking to an offer review date so that everybody has an opportunity to get in the house and submit their best offer, and you make sure that your seller gets the best terms, or discouraging people from submitting love letters and sticking to the business terms of the deals that come in. And really, I mean, that's all of that coaching has to happen before the moment the offer's on the table. And I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice that we're offering over and over again, is sit down and counsel and educate people when they are calm, before they are having that panic that I'm going to be without a house in between A and B.
Yeah, I think to Anne's point, here's the thing. One of my favorite sports, right? No offense, Terrence, is baseball. Okay. And here's why. The concept of baseball. Home plate, it's 17 inches wide. Whether you're a 6-year-old playing t-ball, or you're a professional playing in the major leagues, home plate is 17 inches. So what that means is, if a pitcher is struggling to find the strike zone, they just get sent down to minor leagues to work harder and hone their skill. Like, someone doesn't come out and go, hey, let's give them the 20-inch, home plate, right? I bring this up because right now, when it's a competitive market, to Anne's point, these love letters, which, realtors, we have to stop encouraging these things. And if your buyer wants to do this, you have to say no, because you're not allowing home plate to be 17 inches, right? It's not an even level playing field for everyone, especially, right, our brown and black, people of color, minorities, when it comes to home ownership. And so when things are tight like this and things get super competitive, we as the realtor, right, controlling the situation on both sides, have to really keep home plate at 17 inches so that it is fair for everyone, right? And that's when a true win-win is happening for both sides of the table.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that too, Amy. That's great wisdom, Ann and Tommy. One of the things I always say, and I'm real big on repetitive statements because it becomes a part of your DNA. And I always say, never lose your integrity over one transaction.
Yep.
Like, if this is something that you want to do for a long time, because the market will shift again. And those people, whether the buyers or sellers, will remember how you treated them. And then I always tell my agents, competence creates confidence. And if you look at a lot of the agents that are struggling in this market, they were not willing to do the fundamental things they needed to create the framework, which is studying the contracts, knowing the addendums, really understanding negotiations, doing those things, having their scripts, consistent. And so now that the heat is happening, they're floundering. And so I just want to encourage all agents, like, really focus on competence, because that's the fundamental things, and that's the athlete in me, right? When you get tired and exhausted, whatever fundamentals you have, that's what's going to come out in the heat of the moment. And that's where I always encourage my agents to focus on integrity and focus on competence, and just really researching and knowing their stuff.
That's that muscle memory that Terrence is talking about, right? So then in that game time situation, when we are in multiple offers and deadlines and whatnot,
yep,
when you're practicing that, the muscle memory kicks in, so you don't have to worry about, not being an integrous person in the situation, whatnot, and representing and putting the best foot forward for your clients.
Or potentially your implicit bias coming into play.
Yes.
Which we all have, and we are aware we have now, and doing work on. But it doesn't mean it's not going to come into play. And your seller, if you sit down and explain with them when they're rational and calm why accepting love letters could be problematic and could contribute to housing discrimination that's been at play in our communities for a long, long time, most of them, if it's not the day of the letters, will say, you know what, that's great. I don't need those. Like, bring me an offer that meets my terms and my needs. But that conversation has to start back here somewhere. Terrence, I'm very disappointed to discover that I did not invent the phrase competence creates confidence. I'm sure that was unique to our practice.
I trademarked it already.
Yeah.
Solid stuff there, and probably a topic we should continue. But as far as the market conditions, a conversation that should be continuing in our marketplaces with each other, professional to professional, to make sure that we've got things going in the positive and professional way. Let me go back to the question about what surprised you in your marketplace. So obviously, this kind of legality, compliance, the things that we're having to deal with and conversations we're having to have were a little bit surprising and coming out of a tight market. Moving from 2020 to 2021, especially when it comes to equity and what sellers are doing as far as trends in revamping their properties, putting more money down. What are you seeing as far as surprising trends as it is in regard to the financial piece and equity?
Just from the standpoint of buyers right now, at least in Chicago, that had put money aside, saying everyone always says like, hey, yeah, I'm not afraid of taking on a project, right? Because everyone's watched every HGTV episode of whatever, Fix It or Flip It or whatever brothers are doing whatnot, right? In the pandemic. So what's surprising though is what we're finding here, at least in Chicago, and maybe it's true nationally, is that while buyers might have $100,000 in cash set aside to redo a kitchen, bathroom, whatever it is, especially with money so cheap right now, people are willing to leverage and spend and borrow $100,000 more for a move-in ready spot, right? They don't want to put the money in because why use $100,000 of their cash that's sitting in their bank account when they can finance that over 30 years when interest rates, right, are starting with the number 2 or 3 right now. So that's been pretty surprising because, and what it's doing is that the homeowners and the inventory that's out there that, these sellers that have done the work and updated, or the new construction properties, those are the ones that are getting a lot of attention, right? And those price points are starting to disappear because they're costing more money to get into that.
Terrence is the man on this, right? That's your area as far as what people are doing on their properties, what kind of trends we're seeing.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like I was mentioning, I guess the thing that surprised me the most in the market or in my market is the design aesthetic, to really see that people, when you're stuck in your home with the shutdown and everything, you realize like, well, maybe it's not as open as I thought it was. Maybe it doesn't flow as well, right? And so the modern contemporary design that's in bigger markets, I think that is one of the designs, obviously with the shows and everything that's going on. People are really wanting more open floor plans, higher ceilings, minimalist design, because that's a big aesthetic point for the modern contemporary design. And that's what we're building. We cannot build them fast enough at Murphy Signature Homes because people want modern contemporary right now in modern form.
We miss going to a nice hotel and escaping from the hot mess of our houses. And I mean, I think that's what that minimalist aesthetic gives you, is that very soothing feeling. And if you're not going anywhere, then you might hope to attain that at home.
There's no turn down service at my house though. When it comes to bed, I don't get a cookie on my bed, and no, but that's okay.
No, yeah, you can buy the house, but I don't know who's gonna keep it clean like that.
No one's gonna pamper me.
We were talking a little bit about the introduction of the vaccine and the vaccine being more readily available to people. Are you seeing that affect your buyer pool at all right now? Do you anticipate that might be a thing coming up later this summer, even this fall?
So here's the one thing I'll say real quick is that I remember I told you the downtown market, there's 12 months of supply. Last summer, there were 17. And part of why that bounce back in that downtown high-rise market, I do believe, is there's confidence in people with the vaccine, restaurants opening up, neighborhood amenities. So I do think that's going to continue to snowball. There's no data behind that, right? But that's the feeling that I'm getting. And I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I'm just laughing. Tommy, our condo market went from 2.2 months of inventory last year down to 0.7 months last month. So I just, we should send them your way, I guess.
I'm just going to come get licensed and join your company.
I got a desk for you.
All right, guys, to wrap it up, really good stuff. We've talked about educating our customers, our clients, but also agents and other professionals in the marketplace. We've talked about how to make sure that sellers understand what their options are and maybe encouraging them to get off the fence. We've talked about, again, it's kind of centering a lot around educating the market and what's really going on. What one effort has been most effective for you, most successful for you in the first part of this year? And what do you plan on kind of double downing on for the rest of the year? Anyone want to jump on that one?
For me, because I'm focusing a lot on the listing side. Right now, 8 out of 10 listing appointments in 2021 have still been this way through this little rectangles on my screen. So I'm actually surprised about that because I thought maybe I'd be doing more in person, but I'm more efficient, less travel time. I'm still converting at a high level. So I'm going to just continue to double down on my screen time, right? I might just have to get a makeup crew budgeted into my P&L statement. So I'm looking crispy, but that's my focus, to continue to do that.
Excellent. Anne, you want to take it?
Go for it, and then I'll go.
I was just thinking about Tommy and how are people ever going to see your socks if you never go on in-person listing appointments anymore? I'm worried about this. That's
I'm worried
problematic.
too.
You know what I was just thinking about, that this is a good question, because we had been a pretty regional market. And one of the things that I think is interesting and creates opportunities for agents and for buyers is just exploring other communities. I mean, obviously, big picture, we've seen that with work from home scenarios becoming more permanent, but just as affordability has become such a problem, brokers getting out and educating people on other cities and lookalike neighborhoods and places where maybe they hadn't explored, instead of just that jam up of everyone wanting to land in only one place. Like, there's lots of other communities that are interesting. And so for somebody who's frustrated because they can't get someone into a home, be the person to discover something new, get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I think that's where we're seeing success. They're moving into other areas and turning people on to that.
Love it.
Yeah, and I would add to it is just diversification in the inventory that you manage or you list, right? So if you are doing the condos like Tommy's talking about, right? Try to go get some, luxury, get some new build. So for us, we mainly do farm and ranch, we do luxury, and we do new build, but we also do investment properties. So we're really diverse in the type of clients that we have, but the type of listings that we have. Another thing we're doubling down on is expansion. So I'm getting ready to expand my team in other markets and doing these tactical expansion teams. Instead of just growing big, it's all about focused and creating these experts in each little pocket or region throughout the state of Texas.
Love it. Well, I would end it by saying, first of all, what a great opportunity to get to meet all of you. I would double down on everything I've heard here, which includes the relationship and the strategic relationship. Understanding where your market is going. If you've got people who are migrating to another place, building relationships, Inman's a perfect community to be able to do that, make those connections, and create not only the inventory but the sale on the other side. Anything else you want to throw in, panelists?
It's Fair Housing Month. And so whatever's happening in your market, slow down. Like, it's insane everywhere, but it's a really good time. You have to make time, particularly with these market conditions, to make sure you are, practicing at the highest level of integrity. And that's something, no matter what is going on. There's some really great programming happening. Hats off to NAR. And they've got a whole section where you can do education for yourself. You can share resources with your clients, but nothing is too busy for us to not pay attention to that.
Yep.
Wonderful.
It's great close.
Great close. All right, we'll close with that. Thank you all so much for all of your insight, your effective communication, your sharing of best practices, and enjoy the rest of enjoy the rest of the session today.
Thank y'all
Thanks for having us.
See you, Tommy. See you, Ann. See you, Amy.
Bye-bye.
One of the things that's done really well for us in the past year has been able to just focus on our colleagues in the business. They're humans too. And so checking in with them, calling them, making sure that they're doing okay. Aside from that, they'll maybe tell us about a new listing that they've got coming up, which is giving us an advantage with our buyers. It's just been such a good resource that in this business, when you feel like you're an island of one, really helps. Have a great day.
Okay, so just real quick, Amy, great job. Great lead.
Lead blah is a technical term, just so you know. Feel free to use it anytime.
So the chat loved that session, and I'd say happy birthday, Tommy. And right, and then my one big takeaway, other than so many things, but just competence over confidence. Love, love, love.
Yeah,
So
don't lose your integrity over one transaction. I thought that was key too. As Anne and Tommy and Terrence kind of touched on, we have all been running so hard this year. It is kind of no wonder that burnout is among the highest levels it's ever been with agents. I think Anne even mentioned it. We have to slow things down a little bit. So love the title of this next and very important session. Self-care isn't selfish, it's strategic. Laura Monroe is with Stephanie Lanier to share with us how putting yourself first allows you to set realistic boundaries, serve your clients, and be at your very best. Let's listen in.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to see you.
I am so glad to see you. We are here today with Stephanie Lanier, who is the team leader for Linear Property Group out of North Carolina, as well as the founder of Inspiration Lab. And I am going to have you talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to welcome you to the Inman stage because we are going to have a new conversation to the Inman stage, which is about self-care. In this industry, we want to have more inclusive conversations about things that can be uncomfortable and awkward, and sort of open the kimono to these conversations and create some safe space for that. Mm-hmm. And you are the perfect person to have this conversation with. I want our audience to kind of understand a little bit about your personal story and why this is such a passion to you specifically. But in this industry, it's so important for us to create the space and time to have this conversation. So I'm so glad that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. And yes, self-care I'm super passionate about, and love Inman. So many of my most important relationships in real estate have come from being at events and being a part of the Inman community. So thank you for having me. Okay, my story. I am a realtor in Wilmington, North Carolina. We are a coastal dream town. You might know Dawson's Creek or One Tree Hill. That was all filmed here. And so it's a beautiful place to live and to raise a family and to grow. And so I came here for college. I went here for undergrad and graduate school at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. And my master's degree is actually in social work. So I was a clinical social worker before I was a realtor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which that helps a whole lot. You can imagine, right? Because people say, like, I wish I'd trained to be a therapist. Well, like, I did. So yay. It's like so helpful. In addition to writing contracts and negotiating, understanding, all that stuff is great.
Yes.
So that was my background. And I had my son, Oliver, and I stayed home with him for the first probably, it was like right at 19 months. And so I thought I'll ease back into doing therapy once he gets a little bit older. We hopefully would have more children. And so that was sort of my life. And I had my minivan, and I was just looking forward to being like a stay-at-home mom with a minivan. That was sort of my vision for that season in my life. And when Oliver was 19 months old, he started doing these like weird twitching things. Like, it's the only way I know how to explain it. We took him to the doctor twice, and they said, hey, you're new parents, like it's probably a virus. And then there was a Sunday morning where we just really couldn't wake him up. He was in his crib, and he wasn't like asleep, but he was like somewhat unconscious. And it was just really strange. And we didn't know much like what to think about it. My brother-in-law's the ER doctor. We called him, put him on the speakerphone, like, hey, what's going on? And he was talking us through stuff. And over time, it just got more and more concerning. Like, Oliver wasn't waking up. His lips were turning purple.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it became really clear that something dangerous was happening. But again, we didn't know. We thought we had a healthy 19-month-old. And our next door neighbor happened to be a nephrologist. And so we ran over, knocked on her door, and she came in the front door and she said, like, she looked at him and she went, oh, she was like, you need to call 911 right now. And I mean, as a parent, like, even like my palms are sweating just saying it again, because watching a doctor freak out, that, you know, you just don't want to see.
Scary.
That.
So how old is he now?
He's 12 now.
He's 12 now, and he has disabilities and special needs, and that's just really impacted your life 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So we called 911. He was airlifted to Chapel Hill, and we found out that he has a rare genetic disorder. And so he now has profound autism. He's nonverbal. We have about 60 hours a week of care. He's still wearing diapers. He has a C tube and a G tube, and his care is just incredibly complicated. And 2 years ago, he actually was diagnosed with kidney cancer, if you can believe it. I mean, the kid has been through so much. We caught it early. We had a surgery, and thankfully, we think that we've put that behind us. So it's been an incredibly difficult process. He has special needs, but he's also medically fragile. And so my personal life has a lot going on. And part of why I got into real estate is that helicopter ride that he had to take on that day that we called 911. It was $17,000. And that was one bill. And you guys know how much social workers make. And I literally remember telling Andrew, I don't know if I should say this, but I was like, I either need to sell drugs or houses. Like, we have got to make some money, you know? And he had always said, you'll be great at real estate. And that's really how I got started. Is I needed a business that would allow me flexibility, just unlimited financial opportunities, because we had all these bills, and honestly, something for my sanity. Like, I needed something for me. Watching him have seizure after seizure, I was losing myself.
Right. So, I mean, and many in real estate get started because they need to have a lifestyle to suit other needs that they have. Yeah. And I think what's not really known is that once you get into real estate, it is either, depending on the market, and certainly if it's anything like it is now, you're just off and running. And there is no 5-day work week. It's a 7-day work week. You're always on call. And we talk a lot about setting expectations, but going into real estate with this already happening in your life, where did you start to develop your passion for the self-care and be really strategic about it?
Yeah, well, right away, I knew, like, I called a therapist right away. Like, I knew I was going to need help to do this, you know? And so right away, that was one of the first things that they talked to us about. In fact, a lot of Oliver's doctors ask us, like, what is going to be your self-care plan? Because they knew what was ahead of us. Wow. Great. So by listening and accepting a lot of people who'd been down this path before, I began to think, okay, I need to be really serious about this, and not like bubble baths and eating bonbons.
That's exactly what we don't want, right? We don't want to just list off the same thing that you can Google, what is self-care, which is just take a spa day or a hot bath. You know?
Right. I mean, like, that's fun. And I mean, baths are actually, like, of all the things on the list, probably a really good one. But I feel like what's happening in real estate, if you take out my personal and you just, like, we have a very busy real estate team. Hopefully we'll do about 120 to 130 deals this year. So we've got a lot of deals going on for our market. And I feel like with self-care, we're bringing a pair of scissors to cut down the jungle when we need a machete. Yeah. Like little kid scissors, trying to hack back at all this stress, and we don't have the right tools. And it's like, you can't go on a spa day and hack back stress from 6 months of just being at your absolute max capacity. And so I think we got to really, really bring self-care practices, not just a one-off, into our life that's in proportion to the stress level. And every realtor I know is really stressed, which means you have to have a lot of self-care practices that are sustainable and free. Like, you know, I mean, you only have so much time and money. So it's like trying to figure these things out is really, really important in people's lives.
It's so true. And I was doing a little reading before we joined, before we got together today. And the World Health Organization defines self-care as establishing and maintaining your personal and mental health. So I didn't even think of it like that, as sort of this daily process. It's to me, it's always been, when I feel burned out, I guess it's time to just do some self-care. But until you get to that point, there's really not a lot of maintenance other than maybe working out, doing some of the cliche things that we talk about. But the sense of doing something daily to maintain and establish that has always been different. So talk to me a little bit about what you do daily to help establish and maintain self-care?
Well, I will answer that, but I also, when you were talking, I was having this mental image of like what we have to learn how to do. What I want to teach people how to do is have the self-awareness to know when to hit the brakes before you hit the wall. Because if you're waiting till you hit the wall, right, it's so much harder to put the pieces back together. But if we can know ourselves well enough to hit the brakes, I think that that's key. So self-awareness is actually a large piece of this, and being at home in your body, which I'm weird, but especially if you have a trauma background, it can be very hard to be in touch with your physical body. Yes. So I think that's part of it. But for me, the number one self-care, and everyone can do it, and we do it every day, is sleep. If you sleep well, it is a force multiplier in your life, meaning that you will get a disproportionate positive effect on everything else. I don't love to exercise. I like to go for walks, but I'm not a big exercise person. I eat okay. I'm super big on hydration. Like, I've picked the different things that kind of work for me. It's a lot of time with friends and family, love to read, but sleep is something we can all do and we all have to do. So why not
do it to thrive? Yes.
You have to sleep. So you're going to sleep. So the question sort of is, how can you take your sleep wherever it is to the next level? Because we know that sleep is just, it affects everything. And I used to get up super early to work out because I read like Miracle Morning or something. And
I remember that book. Yes.
And I hate working out to begin with. And at 5 a.m., I was so sleep deprived because I woke up at 3 thinking, am I going to be late? And then 4 o'clock, like, oh my gosh, I got to get up early. And then I go work out and I was like wimpy because I'm like, need coffee and I don't like it anyway. And when I finally was like, you know what would work for me is to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep. It would make me a better mom to Oliver. It would fix emotionally. I'm going to have bandwidth for the team. I'll be more creative. Like, we know that when you sleep, your body cleans your brain of plaque. It takes your little memories and puts some of them in the file cabinet and discards the other ones. Like, it's incredible what happens when we sleep.
Very restorative.
Yes,
absolutely. Yes. And without it, your whole day or week can just, regenerate. I mean, just degenerate is what I should say. Yeah. It just goes downhill. Yeah,
it does. And I think it's the thing that everybody can do. So that's one of the things where it's like, regardless of anything else going in your life.
Protect
and I'm not saying
sleep.
And I'm just saying, like, let's just make it 10% better. Don't try to get crazy. Let's just kind of try to inch up these changes, and it will make a long-term impact for sure.
So talk to me a little bit about, you're a team leader. You have how many agents in your team?
So we have 4 full-time agents. And so with me, that's 5 full-time agents and then 2 full-time administrative marketing folks. And all of us are working moms.
Yeah. So that's a lot. So when you're having conversations about self-care, or how do you learn to identify it in others? Because we talked a little bit earlier about that absorption being that shock absorber for not only your clients and their high and their, dramatic energies and all of this different thing, that therapy that you were talking about earlier, but you also now have this team that you're taking care of and these agents. So what have you seen, especially this past year, and what sort of things have you put in place to help create that space around that conversation?
Oh, I mean, I think it's so important. I mean, first of all, we have to model it, right? As leaders, we have to live it. So whatever it is you want to see displayed in your team, you need to live it. Whatever you're living is being displayed in your team. So you can always figure it out that way. So I think modeling it is really important. The self-care piece, the taking time. And the way that I check in with my team is we use this 1 to 10 scale. This is not some sophisticated scientific thing. It's just something I came up with. And it's not even that creative, but a 1 is like, your stress is so low, you feel really good, nothing is going wrong, you're on vacation basically. A 10 is like, I am overwhelmed, I am really stressed out. And then sometimes my team this year have said I'm a 12. And so when I get a text or somebody saying to me I'm a 12, or sometimes I can just read it in their body language, but we haven't been together as much physically. I think that's when a team leader, you got to step in, you got to lighten the load. You got to figure out what needs to happen. Is it ordering you dinner to be delivered tonight? Can I go do a showing? How can I lighten this load for this short amount of time?
Right. I love that. And it's a quick way without being, I think the stigma behind mental and emotional self-care is you don't want to appear weak. You don't want to appear like you're not 100% there for others. And so we, especially as women, will sort of, segue back into, let others know how strong we are and that we can take on more and we can do all of this. And it's this hustle mentality, which is great when you can hustle. But what do you do? And I love just that simple signal of, listen, I'm a 10 today. I'm going to have to really lighten my load today, or, sort of open that conversation in a very simple way without having to, give up all of the vulnerability.
Right. I mean, it's like if things are going sideways with your teenager, I don't need to know details. If you want to share them with me, I'd be honored. But if you just need to quickly say, hey, I can't handle any more leads, and like, no, I don't want to talk to this person who might want to move here and wants to know all about the beaches, like sort of helps me know too how to work, how to distribute opportunities and where people are. But we really love to customize solutions to the team to figure out like what, and that helps when you have a small team, but how do we care for people? And I say this all the time, but people feel loved in the details. Okay. Knowing that your agent is allergic to dairy and only likes their latte a certain way, understanding that if you get them a lily instead of a sunflower, that they're going to have allergies or the cats eat them and can die. Like these details are how people feel loved. And so we have this form, it's called Deets on Peeps, where we have them fill out stuff. And so then when they're having a rough day, we also have some material to work with. Like we know, like it can be like a candy bar, a Twix bar. Sometimes we have everyone's favorite theme song and we'll just like play it when they come into the office. Like it doesn't even have to be money. It just has to, like, I see
it's
you.
Culture. It's culture building is really what it is. And I think when you include that humanity piece, that care piece, that really opens the doors for, continuing on with great retention, helping people feel supported no matter where they are in their career. And these are incredibly important conversations. We've learned this from Brene Brown and, Dare to Lead and all of the different things. And I feel like it's really, really important. So one of the things that I wanted to just share with our audience and also sort of get your insight, Stephanie, is I was reading an article on the 7 pillars of self-care. And I'm just going to read them really quick because I think that when we think of self-care, we have a tendency to lump everything into that spa day, that hot bath. And you have also talked about the difference between numbing and nourishment. Yeah. So I'm going to have you dive into that for 1 second, but here's one thing, which is 7 pillars of self-care: mental, emotional, physical, environmental, spiritual, recreational, and social. These are all the areas that we need to be intentional and, sort of create that space in our lives to continue to maintain and establish that self-care. Really quickly, we're winding down on our time now, but let me just have you have the final word on really the importance and where we're going with self-care and how we can continue to make this a very important conversation to help care for one another.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like it's just important to say what the title of this talk is, which is Self-Care is Strategic. It's not selfish. And when you think about all the people that love you and are counting on you, they want you to be well. They want you to live a life that's maybe not your best life, but a life where you're flourishing and where you're having wonderful moments and where maybe you've gone through hard stuff and you're coming back stronger. I mean, like they say in the South, like no grit, no pearl. I mean, part of how you get to be strong, wise, capable is your hard experiences. Hardship is not wasted unless you allow it to be. And so I think the self-care motto is not just about optimism and positivity, but about the reality that life is hard. Yes. And I have a sick child and I have a company to run and we have COVID. Like, yes, it is hard. And that is why sometimes you're a 10 or a 12, and that is okay. That's human. But when you're a 2 and somebody's a 12, then you help each other. But if you're not raising your hand when you need help, we can't help you, right?
I love that. Yeah. I mean, just that scale right there is such an incredibly powerful way to really reach out to your people and understand that.
Everybody's not all, you're in different places in life. And that's one of the things I'll say is that when Oliver has been in the hospital so many times, so many people probably listening to this have sent us meals, have been kind to us. And at first I was like kind of prideful and I didn't want help, but he got so sick and things got so scary. I just was humbled and I was like, yes, we'll take your help. And you know what? By receiving love, we become much better givers. I know the kind of meals to send. I know the things to give people because I've been in those dark places and I've received that. And so there's actually great wisdom in that humility and allowing ourselves to be loved and in the awareness that, yes, I mean, we're not superheroes. And it's like, sometimes I think in real estate as women, we're running around like Superwoman, but the cape is choking us. Like it's too tight. We got to untie it and take it off for a minute. Like just, you can put it back on, because sometimes, some days I'm like, I can't believe I did all that stuff. Like that was amazing. But other days you're like, this is a little tight. I got to back up from this. And so I think that it's really, really important to model this for our children, for our team, and in our industry, because our industry is so much driven on our time and energy, being able to show property and go out, be with clients. And when we're not well, we can't do that. And so I feel like self-care is
think of it as a strategy, not a selfish thing to do. It's not. I think we're saying it.
No, it's
what out of the universe.
Right. What's selfish for you is to not learn how to put on the brakes. What's selfish is to keep running into the wall and then creating the wreck and the disaster, and then everybody's got to keep putting you back together. What is strategic and smart and wise and kind to everyone is to say, I'm going to pump the brakes here. This is getting a little out of control.
I love it. Well, I think this is the perfect place to just pause this conversation. I'm sure we'll jump into it another point. But Stephanie, thank you so much. Where can we learn a little bit more about self-care with the Inspiration Lab?
There's so many resources, but yeah, at the Inspiration Lab, you can come to the inspirationlab.co, and we have lots of free resources on self-care, some of my favorite books and tools out there. So we'd love for you to come visit us over there.
I love it. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Have a great day.
Thank you too.
Hi, Inman community. This is Stacy Soleil, one of your 2021 Inman ambassadors. I'm also the marketing and technology director with West here in Southern California. My back to basics tip is remembering when you're taking the time to write those personalized handwritten notes with your favorite pens, take the time to comb through your Facebook profiles, look at each person's account, and pull out something personal, something that's happened to them recently, whether it's a celebration or a milestone or a family trip. Personalize it, grab that little fact, and add something about that into that note. Showing that you're paying attention to what's happening now keeps you top of mind, and also shows that you're just paying attention. Okay, I hope you appreciate this back to the basics tip, and just keep crushing it here in 2021. Talk soon. Bye.
When looking for a realtor, the average person gets between 3 and 10 referrals from family and friends. When someone Googles you, are you the best referred option? At Ogvo, we make sure you're the obvious choice by properly optimizing your digital footprint so you show up best. Reviews, profile optimization, social influence, and a whole lot more. Contact Ogvo today to learn more about how we can help you be chosen in 2021.
Wow, Amy, what a morning.
Wow is the right response, especially to that last session with Stephanie. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, right? Like her journey and her story, but it's so inspiring. And, I loved, like, I think I was trying to text you the quote, the keep is choking us.
Yeah.
I feel like I experienced that recently.
That's what I loved about that whole thing is we've all been there, right? Burnout is a real deal. It's a real medical term, and it can take you by surprise. So I loved that she talked about just some really easy ways. The quote of have the self-awareness to hit the brakes before you hit the wall. Yeah. That's a little bit of a wake-up call, but that 1 to 10 scale was the winner for me, is how easy to be able to do that.
Yeah, such good stuff this morning. And, I learned a lot today. I was so grateful for the journey. I'm so grateful to have you on here with me today as one of my most favorite human beings in the whole planet. I'm so grateful to you for joining us today and being with me. I'm grateful.
Oh, my girl, I loved it. I enjoyed every piece of the general session today. Felt today's Connect was even particularly informative for agents who are looking to be the knowledge brokers, right? For the buyers and sellers, but then that kind of wrapping up with some of the basics and the self-awareness piece. And I love every opportunity I get to hang out with you. So this was fabulous. And you're participating in a lot of these Connects.
Yeah, it's been an amazing ride, I have to tell you. But I do want to say this to the community. Thank you for going along this journey with us this morning. We started out with our, I jokingly say our favorite topic, but probably our least favorite, iBuying, right? And then we journeyed through learning new stuff and learning about new opportunities out there for our buyers, our sellers, our homeowners, from the financing perspective, from the investing perspective, things that, like I was talking to Clayla, do not put your head in the sand, guys. Like, we've got to get educated on this stuff, because our consumers are, we're being trained, right, to, continue to want things like instant gratification, like through Amazon and DoorDash and Netflix, right? And all these new technologies in these other areas are training our brains and training our behaviors. And so it's only natural that these things are going to progress into the real estate industry. And change is happening. It's just here, and then we talked about market trends and talking about how to navigate in this like crazy, amazing market. So many opportunities there with what's happening all over the country. And I imagine in other places in the world as well. And then, of course, finally wrapping up with taking care of ourselves. So I want to remind you guys, we are hosting Inman Connect events for every month. And so come and join us May 18th. And you see my girl, Katie Kosiv and Joe Rand, take you through the journey, the continued journey of education. And then also don't forget our big 3-day event, June 15th through June 17th, Inman Connect. It's going to be amazing.
Awesome. So fun. Plan to be there. And yes, you also heard Brad mention it at the top of the general session day. It is really happening. Live, real live human connection is coming your way, Kendall. In October, we're back in person in Las Vegas. Tickets for Inman Connect Las Vegas will go on pre-sale for select members only in May. So if you are not a select member, and you should be, because you get access to all the industry's best news, the exclusive perks and discounts, then you need to make sure that you become a select member by going to inman.com. And that way you can go ahead and get registered for the live event coming October. So Kendall, will I see your beautiful face there live in October?
Absolutely. All right, guys, go hop on that 1 o'clock session. It's going to be a bomb. All right. See you later. Bye.